The Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, the betting favorite Trayvon Walker went number 1. Now, we did our mock draft yesterday, and of course I said Kayvon Thibodeau, and I think a lot of people had something to say about that a little bit. I don't think a lot of people thought Kayvon would go as high as he did either. He goes number 5 to the New York Giants, and it just seems like it seemed like the right pick. Like, it's the immediacy of him being drafted, all of a sudden, like, everything else faded away, like, oh, they nailed it.
Yep.
You know? And that makes you wonder why he wasn't the number 1 overall pick. I really think he should have been. Jacksonville seems ecstatic with the Trayvon Walker pick. I am not. He's not necessarily a guy that just flat out comes off the edge and gets after the quarterback. I don't know. You know, Jacksonville thought they made the right pick. We'll see how it plays out. There's a ton of expectation on him. This team is not very good. They got a new coach. All of that is in play right now. But at number 2, then, Aiden Hutchinson, of course, goes home to Michigan, back to Detroit. For the Detroit Lions, I think that's a home run pick for him. For the Lions as well, him coming off the edge. The Houston Texans, in a bit of a surprise. I know Trevor Sikkema, our guest yesterday, said this. He said that Derek Stingley would go number 3.
Yep.
He had heard some things, and some other people had talked about if that was a situation where a defensive edge rusher, the 2 guys that they really liked weren't available, that they were going to go corner. And so, you know, going number 3, where I think, you know, you could have got him later. This was something where I think Houston could have traded back if this is the guy they wanted to get. But they go and they reach and they get Derek Stingley Jr., and a lot of people think that maybe the pick after him in New York, Sauce Gardner, was the better of the corners in terms of his length, his size, all of it. But if there was anybody who was ecstatic as the New York Jet fans, it was Rich Eisen last night, right? And Sauce Gardner with his sauce jewelry, his bottle of sauce. I like when Melissa asked him last night, what's in the sauce? He's like, more sauce.
And also, right, how about him giving saying shout out to Rich as he's getting an interview? Like,
right?
Rich pounded the table for that man for months and was rewarded by a shout out.
Well, I think we'll probably find out today when we talk to Rich that Joe Douglas and Rich were in contact over the last few days. Really, like, intense conversations about what and how the Jets were going to go about their business. The worry for Joe Douglas was he didn't know if Sauce would be available because of how Rich had pumped him up, right? And when you're an Emmy-nominated show,
that's what happens.
When you speak, there's a bump. There's a real bump to that, right? If you guys remember,
call it the Eisen bump. It's a real thing, right?
Yeah, it was back in the day, the Colbert bump. I don't know if you watched the Colbert show, right? I mean, anytime Colbert had him on, anybody on the show, you know, they became a household name. And now Sauce is. You have Sauce in every house, and now it's going to happen. It truly is. Sauce Gardner at 4. We mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau to the New York Giants at 5. Ekwonu goes to Carolina. That was the first opportunity, I think, for a quarterback to step into the room, right? The Carolina Panthers were in need, or so people would say. Sam Darnold is still there. Sam Darnold is still getting paid $19 million on a 5th-year option this year. You know, so they went the offensive line. And if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm going, thank you. Thank you. You give me more protection. You give a guy that can do both things in the passing game as well as in the run game to help Christian McCaffrey. I thought was a home run pick as well. Then you go back to the New York Giants and Evan Neal, offensive tackle at Alabama, can play left or right, will most likely play right tackle. Great pick. Chris, you said something to me before the show about the top 10 picks this year. Straight up, they got it done right.
Yeah, it seemed like every team nailed it. It wasn't one pick where in the top 10 where you just kind of scratched your head and been like, oh, man, really? I mean, I guess the only one you really could have thought that would have been Stingley at number 3. But like you said, Trevor Sikkema was on yesterday and said that's what he was hearing. So I just felt every team just made the no-brainer, smart. This pick is who you should take in this spot, and they are going to be a good player for you moving forward.
And then maybe one more question to it may have been Drake London at 8. Just because the injury, he didn't run a 40.
Right.
There was speculation. But what we should have known Drake the singer, the rapper out there, he had some inside information he had to. He threw $100,000 down on Drake London being the first overall wide receiver drafted in last night's draft. It was a plus 240, so he made a cool $250,000 there.
$250,000.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, Sarah's a Falcons fan, obviously. She's psyched about it. I mean, he's like their Mike Evans now. Big, physical guy who can obviously dominate in the red zone. And I think him being the first wide receiver taken, totally fine. Not a reach, not a stretch, any stretch of the imagination. As we saw last night, wide receivers were plentiful in the draft. Big names, big players. And now that is now a position where guys are getting paid like superstars. As we saw with the A.J. Brown trade, which came out of nowhere, and we're waiting to see what happens with Deebo Samuel, but it's a wide receiver. It's a passing league, as we know, and now wide receivers are getting paid like quarterbacks used to be getting paid. It's kind of a wild time right now.
We're going to get into the conversation piece a little bit about that, but those are your first 8 picks. The Seahawks grabbed Charles Cross, offensive tackle out of Mississippi State, to protect whoever their quarterback's going to be. I suspect them to maybe take a quarterback early in the second round tonight. And then the Jets, at the bottom of the top 10, grab Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, out of Ohio State. Ohio State.
Please get it right. Yeah.
I don't understand. Like it's called the Washington State University, by the way. It is. There's a lot of schools that way. That's just elitism and absolute nonsense. And I will not be a part of it. All right.
But you just were.
I know. I cowered to your, and I won't do it anymore.
I'm not a fan either, but
OSU, And I'm sitting in the man from Michigan's chair. I take on a bit. I'm wearing Michigan blue today. It is what it is. 2 Michigan players go in the top 32. No first-round draft picks out of the Big 12 this year for a second season in a row.
That's bananas.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.